Hebrew readers, church.
Welcome to Hebrew Readers Church. I'm your brother Zachwa, and we welcome you and we thank you for joining us this day. We have a great and exciting lesson for you this day. It's called the I, whether light or darkness. Today we're going to be going into several different areas of what spirits are behind our eyes, how our eyes impact our walk, and the power of the eyes, so that we can actually get edification on how to go through life and how to make the necessary changes to be able to bring forth good fruit. All right. We're going to start in Luke chapter 11, verse 34 and 35. The light of the body is the eye. Therefore, when thy eye is single, thy whole body also is full of light. But when thy eye is evil, thy body also is full of darkness. Take heed, therefore, that the light which is in thee be not darkness. So we want to take heed to this. We want to look and examine to make sure that light is going into our eyes and not darkness. Now, how can we do that? By the things that we consume. Because the light of the body is the eye. Therefore, when the eye is single, thy whole body also is full of light. So that means that we have to be watchful of what we're consuming with our eyes. And also, what we consume a lot of times causes us to see through that scope of through our eyes. That's our perception. So we have to be mindful of what's coming into our eyes, what we're allowing to enter into our eyes, what we're taking heed to go into our eyes. And also our outlook or our perspective through our eyes. We have to be mindful of whether that be light or darkness. Now, what we allow to enter into our eyes either lights our whole body or darkens it. And how we perceive things through our eyes unto our minds shows the true desires of our souls. It's our own desires that determine whether we'll use our eyes to lighten the body or darken it based off what we consume and take pleasure in with our eyes. Now, there is a demon behind this, and we're going to get the understanding of it. One of the zodiacal demons is responsible for causing men to cast an evil eye to see through a lens of darkness. We're going to go into the Testament of Solomon, chapter 105. The 35th said, so this is the 35th element of the zodiacal demons. The 35th said, I am Pethlinoth. I cast evil eye on every man. Therefore the eye, much suffering, if it be drawn, frustrates me. So, if you notice, the only way the demon can work is if our eye be drawn through our own desires or lust. So let's see the different ways the demon can cause our eyes to be drawn to darkness and not the things that would bring forth light into the body, seeing its objective is for us to suffer. Let's look at Sirach, chapter 9, verse 5. So we're going to be going through examples, carnal examples of how this demon operates and how it affects our body and because the eyes is how everything enters into the body. So whether it be light or darkness, what we give our attention to, or what we allow to come in, or what we have desire into, or what draws us, is that if it be drawn, so what draws us and what we allow to enter into our eyes actually has a lot of impact on whether we have light or darkness in our body. Sirach chapter 9, verse 5. Gaze not on a maid, that thou fall not by those things that are precious in her. Now, the word gaze means look steadily or intently, especially in admiration, surprise, or thought. So checking out a man or a woman, or checking out a man or a woman out, like checking them out, is gazing. Or like Reuben said, to pay no heed, which heed means pay attention to or to take notice of. So we see how we can have a desire to use our eyes to put forth a work that's going to bring darkness into our body. So this is how the eyes are working. This is how this demon works. It casts an evil eye. And what we're drawn to, that's what it uses to bring forth the darkness in our body. And it affects our soul. Continuing in Sirach chapter 9, verse 6. Give not thy soul unto harlots. You see that? So it actually affects the soul. Give not thy soul unto harlots, that thou lose not thy inheritance. Because if we continue in that, and we continue being drawn and allowing that to go into our eyes, if that's what we're focused on, or if that's what we're seeking through our lust or our desires, that's what's going to darken our body, and we're going to lose our inheritance of making it into the kingdom. If a woman is giving men attention that's not her husband, she's an harlot. And if a man is giving women attention that's not his wife, he's an adulterer. And fornication is working in them both. So that we can understand that there's a clear line. Look not around about thee in the streets of the city. So we're continuing at Sirach 9 and 7. Look not round about thee in the streets of the city, neither wander thou in the solitary place thereof. Now look at this. This is fruit of giving your eye, or allowing that demon to cast evil in your eye. What it would cause you to do is you'll be looking for the thing to fulfill your lust or desire. Look not round about thee in the streets of the city. So you're looking, going about trying to find where you can fulfill your desire. Neither wander thou in the solitary place thereof. So don't go in places where you know that you're going to be able to fulfill your desire. You see that would be lust leading you. Let not covetousness beguile your doings. So this is the same thing that our forefathers were warning us of. Let not covetousness beguile your doings, to allow fornication to overtake your mind, to look for an opportunity to fulfill your lust. But what should we do rather? Or what should we rather do? Sirach 9 and 8. Turn away thine eye from a beautiful woman, and look not upon another's beauty. For many have been deceived by the beauty of a woman, for herewith love is kindled as a fire. So turn that eye from a beautiful woman. Turn that eye. Turn that eye from a man that's not your husband. Turn your eye. And we have example of this with Thomas, Yache's brother, how being sold as a slave by Yache to a man of India, to preach the gospel, was bid to attend the party for the king's daughter's engagement. Though many people were in the midst, and even a girl right before his face, he chose to turn away his eye and not gaze upon any to lust upon or give place for lust. So he didn't choose for his eye to consume that. The Acts of Thomas were in chapter 8, and we're jumping into the chapter. And when the flute girl had finished her flute playing, she sat down opposite him and looked steadily at him. So let's try to reenact this scenario. Thomas is sitting there, right? It says, but he looked at no one at all, neither did he pay attention to anyone, but kept his eyes only on the ground, waiting until he could depart. So we have a flute girl sitting right across from him, staring at him, looking steadily at him, but he didn't look at anyone. He didn't look at anyone to allow that to enter into his eyes. Neither did he pay attention to anyone. So he wasn't worried about anyone's business. He did exactly what Reuben said. Pay no heed to their affairs. It don't matter what they have going on. I have to be focused on what my eyes are consuming. Neither did he pay attention to anyone, but kept his eyes only on the ground, waiting until he could depart. Now, this example will help both men and women to stand against this demon, as we have the same example of the same demon afflicting our sisters. But as we see with Thomas, Thomas was looking upon the ground, waiting. He had it in his mind. I'm ready to go. He was waiting until he could depart. And that's the difference. Thomas he had his mind fixated that I'm not giving my eyes to this, and my focus until I am delivered from the situation is to focus on what I'm supposed to be doing until I'm able to leave. And this is a growth for many of us to get to the place where we are focused on what we need to do in the moment, to not give heed to anything else and waiting on Alahayim deliverance. And that right there is going to make a world of a difference for us in our walks, to make sure that we're not getting distracted. Thomas wasn't distracted. Thomas sat there. He had his head to the ground. He wasn't looking at anyone. He didn't pay attention to anyone. He wasn't worried about what they were doing. He literally sat there doing focus on what he needed to do until he was delivered from the situation. Because that's where his intent was. That's where his heart was. Because we can only be drawn by this demon based on our own desire or lust. So if that's not what we're seeking, then we are going to be able to wait and withstand. But if that's what we're seeking, it's going to show, and we have to be honest with ourselves so that we can actually come out of it. And we're going to go into that later on in the lesson. Now, we also have this same demon afflicting our sisters, and I want to make sure that we have the examples of that. Reuben chapter 5, verse 3. Moreover, concerning them, the angel of the Lord told me and taught me that women are overcome by the spirit of fornication more than men. And in their heart they plot against men. And by means of their adornment, they deceive first their minds, and by the glance of the eye instill the poison. There goes the eye again. You're gonna learn that what you allow to enter into your eye, or what you allow to come out by your perception, or the way you're using something, the way you're using the eye, shows whether there's light or darkness that's inside of you. And through the accomplished act, they take them captive. For a woman cannot force a man openly, but by a harlot's bearing, she beguiles him. So we see the same demon working in the woman because it's what she's drawn to. If she's drawn to fornication and she is plotting against men in her heart and using her beauty to deceive the mind and using her eyes to attract the man, that's where her desire is. And that's why this demon can have place. So we see the same demon working in the women. Making their eye be used to allow darkness to come in and expel darkness instead of light. Let's see what's dark in Alahayim's sight so we can abstain from it. Seeing that Alahayim's perspective is the perspective we all want our eyes to see from, so that our eyes may be full of light. We're going to jump over to the Testament of Judah, chapter 12, verse 1. And now I command you, my children, hearken to Judah your father, and keep my sayings, to perform all the ordinances of the Lord, and to obey the commands of Alahayim. And walk not after your lust, nor the imaginations of your thoughts and haughtiness of heart. And glory not in the deeds and strength of your youth, for this also is evil in the eyes of the Lord. So when Alahayim sees these things, it's darkness. And if we're operating in this, then Alahayim is seeing us as struggling with darkness. He sees the darkness in us. So this is why we have to take heed to these things. One, not to walk after your lust. Don't walk after your own desires and the things that you find pleasing to yourself or that you get pleasure in. That's evil. Nor the imaginations of your thoughts and haughtiness of heart. So don't be projecting. And don't be looking at things according to your own understanding. Because that's the haughtiness, that's the pride of your heart. Where you're not seeking the understanding, you feel that you already know it. And you already know what's going on. And you perceive that upon any situation, instead of talking and communicating with one another to get understanding. And glory not in the deeds and strength of your youth. So don't glory in what you can do physically and what you've done. It's the same pride. For this also is evil in the eyes of the Lord. So let's not do evil in Alahayim's sight. So we have an example of how lust can lead you to walk after it in Sirach 9 and 7 that we read. Look not round about thee in the streets of the city, neither wander thou in the solitary place thereof. So we see how you can, it says, in Judah it says, and walk not after your lusts. So we can see how one can actually walk after their lust. It's looking around in the streets of the city, wandering out in the solitary place thereof, going to places, trying to, with that inward feeling, knowing you're looking for something. That's lust, and you're walking after it. seeing that would be our evil desire using our eye to go find a way to fulfill a lust, giving place for the demon to draw us. Let's get another example of how this may come to pass in real time. We're going to go into Testament of Judah chapter 12, verse 3. Since I also gloried that in wars no comely woman's face ever enticed me, and reproved Reuben my brother concerning Bilhah, the wife of my father. The spirits of jealousy and of fornication arrayed themselves against me, until I lay with Bathshua the Canaanite, and Tamar, who was espoused to my sons. For I said to my father-in-law, I would take counsel with my father, and so will I take thy daughter. And he was unwilling, but he showed me a boundless store of gold in his daughter's behalf, for he was a king. And he adorned her with gold and pearls, and caused her to pour out wine for us at the feast with the beauty of women. For the wine caused her, and the wine turned aside my eyes, and pleasure blinded my heart. And I became enamored of, and I lay with her, and transgressed the commandment of the Lord and the commandment of my fathers. And I took her to wife, and the Lord rewarded me according to the imagination of my heart, inasmuch as I had no joy in her children. So we have another real life example. Unfortunately, Judah's eye, through his desires, was already in darkness before the wine. This is why we have to be honest with ourselves, to see ourselves honestly and truly, to work on things to come out of them, whether sober or when you drink wine, giving place to the areas where you're weak at, to come to the surface without any resistance. For we see Judah's pride and glorying in himself, and also his covetousness and his greed for riches to be enticed with. He never sought an opportunity to depart, unlike Thomas. So you didn't see Judah sitting there focused, waiting to be delivered or waiting to depart. But he was instead enamored. He was enjoying it. He was getting pleasure out of it. So we see that there was many things going on before the wine even came into the picture that Judah wasn't being honest with himself about to actually deal with. And it ended up causing him to stumble more going forward instead of actually dealing with the situation or dealing with the issue and fixing and working on fixing it, so that when the time came for a future event, that it wouldn't have had the effect on him. So if you truly don't want darkness, departing or standing against it will be the only thing on your mind until you're delivered. So if you truly don't want the darkness to enter into your eyes and to affect your body and your soul, you're gonna be standing against it. And it's gonna be the only thing on your mind until you're delivered. And that's the single-eyed man. The single-eyed man is gonna focus on one thing until they get through it. But if you're double-minded, then you're going to try to do both. You're going to try to fulfill your pleasure and also have a sense of righteousness. Therefore, it's going to be corrupted, and it's going to bring forth darkness. Let's continue reading in Judah chapter 13, verse 1. And now, my children, I say unto you, be not drunk with wine, for wine turneth the mind away from the truth, and inspires the passion of lust, and leadeth the eyes into error. So getting drunk turns the mind away from the law, which is the truth. It inspires the passion of lust, which fills someone with the urge or ability to do or feel something, and gives place to the demon to lead your eyes into error, casting an evil eye to allow darkness to enter into the body. So we see how all these things are working together just to allow darkness to enter into your body. So you had the mind. It said it turneth away the mind from the truth. So it turneth away your mind from the law and inspires the passion of lust. It inspires the passion of lust. That means that it was already there. This is why you have to deal with these things and be honest with yourself to actually work on these things and not just brush over them or think that you already dealt with it, knowing that you haven't actually truly dealt with it. Because all wine does is inspires the passion that's already there. And inspire, as the definition means, fill someone with the urge or ability to do or feel something. So it's pushing you to do it because you want to fulfill the sense of it. And leadeth the eyes into error. So we see that gives place to the demon. That's the demon operating. Because the main thing that the demon wants you to do is based off of what you're drawn into. It wants to lead you to suffer. And who suffers after, let's say, a person gets drunk or a person commits a sin without even drinking? It's the person that committed it. Because now you have to deal with the conscience. You have to deal with the guilt of what you've done. And you're the one that suffers. Continuing in Judah, chapter 13, verse 2. For the spirit of fornication hath wine as a minister to give pleasure to the mind. For these two also take away the mind of a man. For if a man drink wine to drunkenness, it disturbeth the mind with filthy thoughts, leading to fornication, and heateth the body to carnal union. And if the occasion of the lust be present, he worketh the sin, and is not ashamed. So we see the end goal, which is to make you suffer and have to live with the guilty conscience of what you did after the fact. So that's the goal of the demon. And that's the goal of all these evil spirits, because they want to see you suffer. Let's see some other ways this demon can cause us to cast an evil eye. Let's look at Testament of Dan, chapter 2, verse 1. And now, my children, behold, I am dying. And I tell you of a truth, that unless you keep yourselves from the spirit of lying and of anger, and love truth and long suffering, ye shall perish. For anger is blindness, and does not suffer one to see the face of any man with truth. So here it go. Here again, we see the eyes. It does not suffer one to see the face of any man with truth. All right. So we see here again the casting of an evil eye. We see the same demon operating. How it can enjoin itself with other spirits like pride and greed for Judah, and lying and anger for Dan. All of which to darken the eye not to see things in love and truth, or humility and contentment that will actually allow light to enter into the body. Here again, we see the casting of an evil eye, how it can enjoin itself with any other spirit like pride and greed for Judah, and lying and anger for Dan. All the wish to darken the eye not to see things in love and truth, or humility and contentment that will actually allow light in the eye and body, depending on what we allow to enter our eyes based off our desires of what we're drawn to. Continuing in the book of Dan, I'm in the Testament of Dan, chapter 2, verse 3. For though it be a father or a mother, he behaveth toward them as enemies. Though it be a brother, he knoweth him not. Though it be a prophet of the Lord, he disobeyeth him. Though a righteous man, he regardeth him not. Though a friend, he doeth not acknowledge him. For the spirit of anger encompasseth him with a net of deceit, and blindeth his eyes. And through lying darkeneth his mind, and giveth him his own peculiar vision. And wherewith encompasseth it his eyes, with hatred of heart, so as to be envious of his brother. And this is the goal of the demon, for you to suffer and not be able to see correctly, being led by evil spirits, hoping that you get some pleasure in the way that they operate, so that they can stay and continue operating in you. That's how it works. They want you to feel some type of pleasure. And if you feel any type of pleasure, they have a place to continue working and continue operating in you. Let's jump over to the Acts of Thomas, chapter 27, and we're jumping into the verse. Abstain from fornication and covetousness, which is greed, and the service of the belly. For under these three heads all sin cometh about. Now, the service of the belly is insatiableness. Now, the thing that we want to really focus on is it says abstain from fornication and covetousness and the service of the belly. So it would be very important, since our direction is to abstain from it, is to understand abstaining itself. The definition of abstain means to restrain oneself from doing or enjoying something. So just as we were speaking about before, you have to find some enjoyment in the way that these evil spirits are operating. And as far as this demon, there has to be some enjoyment that allows your eyes to cast forth evil, or to look upon evil and be drawn to it. So this is where we have to be honest with ourselves to actually pinpoint, what do we get enjoyment out of? Because if we're not able to be honest to pinpoint the enjoyment that we get out of something, then we're not going to be able to abstain from it. Because it's hard to abstain from something that you can't pinpoint. It's hard to work on something that you don't see as a problem. And that's where it gets very hard for many people, that they can't actually come out of something because they can't see it. Because they get too much enjoyment out of it to want to see it. So we were commanded to restrain ourselves from doing or enjoying something that has to do with fornication, covetousness or greed, or insatiability or insatiableness. That was what we were commanded to do. Don't find enjoyment in those things. So you have to enjoy something to keep doing it. That's just how it works. Something that you don't enjoy, you're not going to want to do it anymore. So this is why we have to be honest to see things in truth. So it gives no place to cast an evil eye to blind us by any evil spirit. We're going to continue in the Acts of Thomas 27. For fornication blinds the mind and darkens the eyes of the soul. That's how fornication operates. So the demon casts an evil eye and based off of what you're drawn to, and fornication comes and blinds the mind and darkens the eyes so that you can't see anything except fornication. And you can't think anything except fornication. So that your body becomes darkened. And it's an obstruction to life of the body. The body becomes dark, making the whole man weak and casting his whole body into sickness. And greed, this is how greed operates. And greed puts the soul into fear and shame. Being within the body, it seizes upon the goods of others. So we see that greed, it seizes upon the goods of others. So greed is not content. Greed is looking for what other people have because it wants it. It's covetous. Remember, the law says, "Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not covet what thy neighbor hath, nor his bondservant, nor his bondservant, nor his bondmaid." When the spirit of greed is operating, you would be looking at another man. At another man's wife. You will be looking at another woman's husband that's not your own, because it seizes upon the goods of others. And it's under fear unless it resorts to other men's goods to be their owner, it be put to shame. And the service of the belly, so this is insatiableness, casts the soul into thoughts and cares and vexations. So this is where you can't get past the thoughts. Like you may have wanted to fulfill a lust, and because you didn't do it, you can't get past the thoughts or cares or vexations of it. It's insatiableness. So you have fornication, which blinds the mind and darkens the eyes because you want to fulfill the lust of it. You have greed, which makes you want to seize the goods of others or what belongs to another person. Then you have insatiableness, which if you don't fulfill it, then you go into the thoughts, cares, and vexations of not being able to fulfill it and not being satisfied. Taking thought, lest it come to be in want and have need of those things that are far from it. So because you couldn't get it, now you're going into these thoughts and cares and vexations. This is how these spirits work. And we're supposed to abstain from them. Restrain oneself from doing or enjoying something. We're not supposed to enjoy the way that those spirits operate, to continue allowing them to operate in us. So we see how fornication works, blinding the eyes by our lust and what we're drawn to. See, and you see that the demon actually starts it because it casts the evil eye based off what we're drawn to allow that darkness to go into our body. Alahayim gave us clear indicators on when we're struggling with darkness in the eye. So Alahayim, if we're not able to be honest with ourselves, to actually pinpoint where it is that we're getting that enjoyment out of, or what we're getting that enjoyment out of, Alahayim always has indicators that show that there is some darkness in your eyes based off of this next thing. We're going to jump into the Testament of Naphtali, chapter 2, verse 6. It says, as his eyes, so also is his sleep. So, if a person struggles with bad dreams, if they're getting attacked in their sleep, or struggling to get sleep at all, those are indicators that the eye has darkness. Paul experienced the same darkness of the eye and testified how the struggle is when this demon has place by the things that draw you having pleasure in them. So we're going to see Paul's testimony of his experience of actually dealing with this demon. We're going to jump into Romans chapter 7, verse 10 through 23. And the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. Now he's talking about Alahayim's commandments, because if you keep those commandments, you'll live forever. But he said, the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death, because he wasn't keeping them. And we're going to understand what he's actually talking about. For sin, taking occasion by the commandment, so sin took advantage of the commandment to cause you not to keep it, deceived me, and by it slew me. Now, we get to really see the eye, because it says the demon casts an evil eye based off of what we're drawn to. So that means that casting that evil eye is going to deceive you to thinking that what it is that you're looking at or what you're allowing to enter into your eyes is okay. And this is what Paul was struggling with. He said, for sin, taking occasion by the commandment, deceived me, and by it slew me. And we're going to understand exactly what Paul is talking about, because it was his perception that was the problem through his eyes. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just and good. So he could admit the law is holy, the commandment is holy, and just and good. He could confess those things to be true, but something else was causing him not to be able to keep them, though he understood that they were good. Because understanding that the commandments are good and that they're the right thing to do isn't enough to actually turn a person to keep them. Well, then that which is good made death unto me. So the commandments are good. Were they made for me to have to die by them? Alahayim forbid, no. But sin, that it might appear sin. Here we go. But sin, that it might appear sin. Paul had to get to the point where sin through his eyes was sin. He wasn't making no more excuses for it. That, oh, it's just this. Oh, don't worry about it. Like, do it this one time. It'll be all right. Or man, I know the commandments is right, but you know, I'm still working on this. Like he had to get to the point where he could see it for what it was. But sin, that it might appear sin, that it might appear sin to me, but sin, that it might appear sin to me, I have to see it as it is. I have to see it as sin and not make excuse for it. But sin, that it might appear sin, worketh death in me by that which is good. That sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. This was the perspective of the demon Paul was struggling with. That sin didn't appear to him as sin because his pleasure in fulfilling it. So the sin was killing. So the sin was killing him because it was against the commandments. But Paul understood that he had to change his eyes from seeing things in darkness to fulfill his lust to seeing them in the light to fulfill Alahayim's will. It was a paradigm shift for Paul to be able to change his perception in the way that he was viewing things. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. So now Paul's explaining the flesh is my problem. Me wanting to fulfill the flesh is the problem. The law is spiritual, but my flesh is sinful. For that which I do, I allow not. So Paul's like, what I want to do, I'm not doing. Excuse me. He said, for that which I do, I allow not. So he says, what I'm doing, that's not what I want to do. Now, we've already read how these spirits operate. Fornication darkens the mind and the eyes. We see how this demon casts forth evil based off what we're drawn to. So we can see what Paul was experiencing. He was experiencing these evil spirits. Though he knew that the law was good, but the carnality, him fulfilling the flesh, was the problem. So the things that he wanted to do, he wouldn't do because of his pleasure in the flesh and what he was allowing to enter into his eyes. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. So what I want to do, I'm not doing it. But what I hate, that do I. And that's the interesting part, is that Paul got to the place that he actually hated it enough not to do it and not to have enjoyment from it because he overcame it. And we can too. We can overcome it, not to have pleasure in it or enjoyment. If then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that it is good. So because he gets taken over by these evil spirits and it causes him not to keep the law, that gave him confirmation that the law is good. That is actually the right thing to do. And Paul had to get that understanding to change his perspective. He had to get that understanding to take away the darkness from within his body and his eyes to be able to see things according to the light. And this is him reasoning, as we all should be reasoning within ourselves so that we can change our perspective. For then if I do that which I would not. So if he's doing what he don't want to do, it consents on him to the law. I consent unto the law that it is good. So that for him told him the law is good because it's hard to do it. Because of his desires and his pleasures and enjoyment in evil. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. And Paul had to get to a place where he was being very honest to see himself, to be able to pinpoint what it was that was holding him back. He said, okay, something's going on here. Something's bigger than me. Now then, it is no more I that do it. So if I'm being controlled and overtaken, it's not me that's doing it, but sin that dwelleth in me. Those evil spirits have a place in me where I'm doing things that I don't want to do. For I know that in me, that is my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. So him fulfilling his enjoyment, there was no good thing that was going to come from it. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not. So Paul had to get to the point to saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to perform that which is good. And praise Alahayim, he did get the answer because he was seeking it. And we can get the answer too if we're seeking it. But you have to want it to receive it. You can't give something to somebody that they don't want. This is why many of us find ourselves still stuck in the same struggles, is because we actually don't want to come out of them. Because if we did actually want to come out of them, we would be delivered. And we would receive the help and the instruction and apply it to come out of it. It's just like a baby. You try to give a baby something that they don't want, it may fall, it may get smacked to the floors, hit to the wall. It's gonna make it everywhere that it's not supposed to make it to. Because the baby doesn't actually want it. And you're trying to force to give it, but the baby don't want it. And it's gonna be very difficult. It's the same for us. If we actually don't want something, it's very difficult. Only difference is Alahayim trying to feed us. But if we actually want it, we'll find it, and Alahayim will do the work. For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. So Paul was being honest with himself. He's having a moment of honesty. And this honesty is going to bring forth the peaceable fruit of righteousness. Because he's confessing his faults. Now, if I do that, I would not. It is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. So now he's being honest. I'm finding enjoyment in these evil spirits. I'm allowing darkness to enter into my eyes. I'm consuming darkness, and it's going and affecting my body and my soul. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. And Paul understood. When he tries to do good, those evil spirits is right there, speaking and saying whatever they got to say, because they don't want you to come out of it. They want to see you suffer. So yeah, the evil spirits are going to be right there, trying to hold on to you where you don't get loose from their grips, to desire and to see things from the light in a new perspective. They'll rather you stay in darkness and in blindness and cast forth evil so that you stay under their grips and suffer. For I delight in the law of Alahayim after the inward man. And that delight after the inward man of the law of Alahayim is what's going to truly deliver us. You have to actually delight in the law of Alahayim. And that's what helped deliver Paul. It's his delight in the law of Alahayim inwardly, not just putting on a show externally to make it seem like you're keeping the commandments, but you actually have to delight in the heart, in the inward man, and truly delight and find enjoyment in keeping Alahayim's commandments. Because the only thing that's keeping the evil spirits to have a grip on you is the enjoyment and pleasure that you have in doing their works. So if you actually have that enjoyment and pleasure in doing Alahayim's works, you would keep it. But if you're grieved and you're dreading having to do Alahayim's works, or you feel like you're missing out on something, or you're being restrained and not being able to do something, then you are going to give place to the evil spirits. Now, Paul goes on to say, but I see another law in my members. So there was another law in his flesh, warring against the law of my mind, because he knew that Alahayim's law was right, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. So Paul got to the point that he understood that the spirit and the flesh was warring against one another within him. The spirit wants to do what's right according to Alahayim, but the flesh wants to do what's right according to the devil. And Paul had to get to the place of seeing that, pinpointing what was actually causing his members to have that pleasure and that enjoyment, and he had to cut it off. He couldn't allow that darkness to enter into his eyes anymore and to darken his body. And we're going to learn how not to do that either. We're going to learn how to do exactly what Paul learned. So we're going to learn what Paul learned to get out of seeing through this mindset by changing what we allow to enter into our eyes through evil desires. But first, we have to remove the sorrow and guilt to walk anew going forward, because the sorrow and guilt can't go with us on this journey. Shepherd of Hermas, Parable 9, chapter 2, verse 6 and 7. And the shepherd saith unto me, why questionest thou within thyself and art perplexed, and bringeth sadness on thyself? So Hermas was sitting there going through it in his mind. And the angel said, "Why questionest thou within thyself, and art perplexed, and bringest sadness on thyself?" So why are you doing that? "For whatsoever things thou canst not comprehend, attempt them not." So if you got something going on that you don't understand, leave it alone. "If thou art prudent, but entreat the Lord, that thou mayest receive understanding to comprehend them." So if it's something you feel that you need to understand, just pray about it and leave it alone until Alahayim gives you an answer. "What is behind thee, thou canst not see, but what is before thee, thou beholdest." So what's behind you and you don't understand, leave it alone and pray about it and keep going forward. And look at what's before thee that you can behold, that you can actually understand. "The things, therefore, which thou canst not see, let alone, and trouble not thyself about them. But the things which thou seest, these master, and be not over curious about the rest." So the things that you can see and you can understand, master those. Put forth your energy and going forward to master the things that's before you. And be not over curious about the rest. So don't be trying to go into spending all your time trying to figure this out and that out that you don't understand. Focus on the things that you do understand and master them. And stop looking backwards or looking at things that you don't understand. When you have plenty that you do understand that you can actually work on and focus on going forward. "But I will explain unto thee all things whatsoever I shall show thee. Have an eye, therefore, to what remaineth." So our eye is supposed to be on what we can understand and what's before us. Not looking backwards, not being over curious of things that we don't understand, but focusing on the things that we understand and mastering them so that we can go forward and grow in Alahayim. So let's work on coming out of allowing our eyes to be used as instruments of evil and instead instruments of righteousness to fill them up with light instead of darkness. Not looking at the things of the past or things we can't understand, but instead looking at the present and applying the things we know now to help us put forth the effort in being diligent of what we're allowing to enter our eyes and circumspect of where our eyes are trying to take us to abstain from lust, anger, pride, or any other evil spirit to our own suffering. Let's learn from Issachar how he used his eyes to bring light into the body. The Testament of Issachar, chapter 3, verse 1. "When therefore I grew up, my children, I walked in uprightness of heart, and I became a husbandman of my father and my brethren, and I brought in fruits from the field according to their season. And my father blessed me, for he saw that I walked in rectitude before him." Now, let's understand this word rectitude. Rectitude means morally correct behavior or thinking, righteousness. So, Issachar, his eyes were in light. Morally correct behavior or thinking. So his perspective through his eyes was morally correct. It was righteous according to Alahayim's law and Alahayim's fruits of the Spirit. He allowed his perception through his eyes was morally correct. He wasn't blinded by fornication He wasn't blinded by anger. He wasn't lifted up in pride. Only thing he was thinking and seeing was what was good in the sight of Alahayim. And let's see, because we're going to get understanding of the things that he allowed to enter into his eyes. It goes on to say, I was not a busybody in my doings. So he wasn't just all over the place. He wasn't in any other person's business. Nor envious and malicious against my neighbor. Nor envious and malicious against my neighbor. So he wasn't envious. He wasn't allowing envy to enter into his eyes or to perceive anything in that manner. Nor malicious against his neighbor. I never slandered anyone. So he didn't allow slander to enter into his eyes. He wasn't watching shows where people were slandering people. He wasn't being around people that were slandering one another to allow that to enter into his eyes. He wasn't in environments that was not suitable for him to have a good, lightful things to enter into his eyes. Nor did I censor the life of any man. So he wasn't sitting there trying to figure out what you got going on. He wasn't a busybody. He wasn't projecting on people. He wasn't sitting there thinking, is this person doing wrong? What are they doing? He was focused on his own works. He was focused on what his eyes were seeing and how he was viewing things and what was entering into his body and into his soul. Walking as I did in singleness of eye. So because his eye was single, only looking to do the will of Alahayim and only doing what's right in Alahayim's sight, he brought forth good fruit. Therefore, when I was 19 years old, I took myself a wife, for my labor wore away my strength, and I never thought upon pleasure with women. So just like Reuben said, nor set thy mind on their affairs. He didn't set his mind on the affairs of a woman. He was focused on doing his work and focused on doing what was right in the sight of Alahayim. But owing to my toil, sleep overcame me. And my father always rejoiced in my rectitude, because I offered through the priest of the Lord all first fruits. Then to my father also, and the Lord increased 10,000-fold his benefits in my hands. And also Jacob, my father, knew that Alahayim aided my singleness. As we talked about before, Alahayim would do the work in you. But it's us that shuts Alahayim out from doing the work in us because we don't actually want it, like Paul was explaining. We have to actually want singleness of eye and righteousness, or else we're going to lock Yache out so that we can continue being drawn to the lust that gives us pleasure. And this is what we have to overcome, is where our pleasure actually lies. And actually taking the time to examine and to reason so that we can actually change our perception. For on all the poor and oppressed, I bestowed the good things of the earth, in the singleness of my heart. So Issachar's sincerity really helped aid him in doing all things right. He was very sincere. For on all the poor and oppressed I bestowed the things of the earth in the singleness of my heart. Singleness of heart is sincerity. He wasn't doing it to seem righteous. He wasn't doing it so that people would honor him or give him glory. He was doing it because it was the right thing to do. And he had enjoyment in doing what Alahayim wanted him to do. And I pray that we find that same enjoyment in doing what Alahayim wants us to do, so that we can bring forth sincerity and good works with singleness of heart, and that our eye may be single, not trying to fulfill darkness and light, but light only. All right. So Alahayim made our whole body for his glory. So let's read the Testament of Naphtali, chapter 2, verse 8, so we can see why everything was created. For Alahayim made all things good in their order, the 5 senses in the head, and he joined on the neck to the head, adding to it the hair also for comeliness and glory. Then the heart for understanding, the belly for excrement, and the stomach for grinding, the windpipe for taking in the breath, the liver for wrath, the gall for bitterness, the spleen for laughter, the reins for prudence, the muscles of the loins for power, and the lungs for drawing in, the loins for strength, and so forth. So then, my children, let all your works be done in order with good intent in the fear of Alahayim. So use everything that Alahayim has given you with good intent in the fear of Alahayim, to use it for Alahayim. And do nothing disorderly in scorn or out of its due season. So let's not use, in this case, our eyes to do evil. And let's not allow evil to draw us through our eyes. For if thou bid the eye to hear, it cannot. So the eye and the ear have 2 different functions, but we're focusing on our eyes, or what we're allowing to come into our body. So neither while ye are in darkness can you do the works of the light. So if our eye is taking in evil and we have enjoyment in evil, we can't do the works of the light. So you can't use all these wonderful things for Alahayim when your eye is in darkness, making the whole body dark. The works that come forth from the body will be evil and not sincere. Let's learn the sincerity that comes from the eyes being drawn to the things of the light. We're going to jump back into the Testament of Issachar, chapter 4, verse 1. And now hearken to me, my children, and walk in singleness of your heart. For I have seen it in all that is well-pleasing to the Lord. The single-minded man coveteth not gold. He overreacheth not his neighbor. He longeth not after manifold dainties. He delighteth not in varied apparel. He doeth not desire to live a long life, but only waiteth for the will of Alahayim. And the spirits of deceit the spirits of deceit have no power against him. Why do the spirits of deceit have no power against him? Because he's sincere. He's single-eyed and single-hearted. And that sincerity brings forth honesty. And it allows the spirits of deceit to have no power against him. For he looketh not on the beauty of women, lest he should pollute his mind with corruption. The single-hearted man or woman doesn't look on the beauty of women or men, because that's what their enjoyment is, and that's what's entering into their eyes and making the body dark. Lest he should pollute his mind with corruption, makes the body dark. There is no envy in his thoughts. No malicious person maketh his soul to pine away, nor worry with insatiable desire in his mind. All right, so that insatiableness that we spoke about earlier, it doesn't worry him or her. For he walketh in singleness of soul, and beholdeth all things in uprightness of heart. That's that perception. He beholdeth all things in uprightness of heart. His perception is to see through his eyes according to the light, to only see the good things and not allow evil or darkness to enter into his eyes, and not to have pleasure in them. Shunning eyes made evil through the error of the world. And this is what we have to do. This is what Thomas did. He shunned his eyes so that the evil of the world didn't make him evil. And we have to choose what we're going to allow to enter into our eyes, because that's going to bring forth fruit in us. Shining eyes made evil through the error of the world, lest he should see the perversion of any of the commandments of the Lord. We have to be very mindful of what we allow to enter into our eyes and what we have pleasure in through our eyes. That's going to bring forth either light or darkness. We're going to continue on to chapter 7, verse 1. Behold, therefore, as ye see, I am 120 years old, and I am not conscious of committing any sin. Except my wife, I have not known any woman. I have never committed fornication by the uplifting of my eyes. Here we go again. This is Issachar. He's a great example of a single-eyed and a single-hearted man, to give us example of the characteristics that we need to display and the things that we need to allow to enter into our eyes, so that we can actually bring forth the peaceable fruit of righteousness. He said he never committed fornication by the uplifting of his eyes. It enters into the eyes. What you set your eyes upon and what you have pleasure in with your eyes, it enters into your soul and your body. I drank not wine to be led astray thereby. I coveted not any desirable thing that was my neighbor's. So he wasn't greedy. He didn't covet. Guile arose not in my heart. So he was sincere and honest. So guile didn't arise in his heart. A lie passed not through my lips. If any man were in distress, I joined my sides with his, and I shared my bread with the poor. That's the sincerity. I wrought holiness all my days. I kept truth. I loved the Lord with all my strength. And he kept that truth with him. And that's what we need to do. We need to keep it. Likewise, also every man I love more than my children. With all my heart. So do you also these things, my children. And every spirit of Beliar shall flee from you. And no deed of wicked men shall rule over you. And every wild beast shall ye subdue, since you have with you the Alahayim of heaven and earth, and walk with men in singleness of heart. And we can do this too, by not looking at the past and looking on this present moment to start from here and taking heed to what we allow to enter into our eyes and how we perceive things through our eyes to examine whether it's of darkness or light, having the knowledge we're learning today. Today, let us start by being honest and truly repenting of our past darkness so that our eyes can be enlightened. Let's read the Testament of Gad, chapter 5, verse 7. For true repentance after an holy sort destroyeth ignorance, and driveth away the darkness, and enlighteneth the eyes, and giveth knowledge to the soul, and leadeth the mind to salvation. And those things which it hath not learned from man, it knoweth through repentance. Now, I know we probably heard about repentance before, but this repentance is after a holy sort. So the word holy means dedicated. The word dedicated means of a person devoted to a task or purpose, having single-minded loyalty or integrity. So, true repentance after a holy sort destroyeth ignorance. If you're devoted to the task or purpose, having single-minded loyalty or integrity, that means that is your focus. That means that you have to be fixated on it and not just going about your life as if nothing happened. That means that whatever it is that you did wrong or where you fell at, you're devoted, and your purpose and your task is not to fall in that again and to do what's needful, not to fall in it. That's a true repentance after a holy sort. And that repentance destroyeth ignorance. It driveth away darkness, which we know those evil spirits darken you, like anger and fornication, and enlighteneth the eyes. That holy repentance bring forth light in the eyes, because now you can see and you're truly putting forth the work to come out of it. You're devoted to the task. You have a single-minded loyalty, which is to overcome that task and not to fall in it again. Putting forth the work that's needed to come out of it or to overcome it. And if we start from today, repenting after a holy sort and applying the things we're learning to come out of our eye being in darkness, we'll become good men and women. Let's jump into the Testament of Benjamin, chapter 4, verse 1. See ye therefore, my children, the end of the good man. And this is what we want to be. We want our end to be that good man or that good woman. Be followers of his compassion, therefore, with a good mind, that ye also may wear crowns of glory. For the good man hath not a dark eye. The good man doesn't have a dark eye. The good man isn't looking to fulfill their enjoyment in evil, or to look upon things that give them enjoyment of evil things that are against Alahayim and his law and his fruits of the Spirit. For the good man have not a dark eye. He's not going to want to see things through the scope of evil spirits and having an enjoyment and fornication and anger and pride and covetousness and strife and so on and so forth. For he showeth mercy to all men, even though they be sinners. The good man showeth mercy to everyone. And though they devise with evil intent concerning him, by doing good he overcometh evil. So he's not concerned with what other people got going on. Just like Thomas wasn't concerned with what the people had going on in the party. Thomas was focused on doing what he was supposed to do. And we have to be the same to be that good man or woman. Not worried about what evil intent someone else may have, but by doing good, we may overcome the evil. By shielding, being shielded by Alahayim. So because we're doing what's right, we know that Alahayim is going to protect us. Not having to defend ourselves. And he loveth the righteous as his own soul. If anyone is glorified, he envieth him not. If anyone is enriched, he is not jealous. If anyone is valiant, he praiseth him. The virtuous man he laudeth. On the poor man he hath mercy. On the weak he hath compassion. Unto Alahayim he singeth praises. As for him who hath the fear of Alahayim, he protecteth him as with a shield. Him that loveth Alahayim he helpeth. Him that rejecteth the Most High he admonisheth and turneth back. And him that hath the grace of a good spirit he loveth as his own soul. Now, if we take on these things, and these are the things that we have pleasure in to enter into our eyes, and these are the things that we perceive that we want to work, and that we have a desire to do, and we have pleasure in them and enjoyment, what is this going to bring forth? Let's continue in chapter 5, verse 1. If therefore ye also have a good mind, then will both wicked men be at peace with you, and the profligate will reverence you and turn unto good. And the covetous will not only cease from their inordinate desire, but even give the objects of their covetousness to them that are afflicted. If ye do well, even the unclean spirits will flee from you, and the beasts will dread you. So by putting on that good man and actually having that light in your eye, the unclean spirits are going to flee from you because you don't have any enjoyment in what they're bringing forth. The beasts would dread you. They're not going to want to have nothing to do with you. In the beast, this is referring to these are the evil angels. and the beasts would dread you. For there is reverence for good works and the light in the mind. Even darkness fleeth away from him. For if anyone does violence to a holy man, he repenteth. For the holy man is merciful to his reviler, and holdeth his peace. If anyone betrayeth a righteous man, the righteous man prayeth. Though for a little he be humbled, yet not long after he appeareth far more glorious, as was Joseph my brother. The inclination of the good man is not in the power of deceit of the spirit of Beliar. I'm going to read that again. The inclination of the good man is not in the power of deceit of the spirit of Beliar. So it's not about winning people over. For the angel of peace guideth his soul, and he gazeth not passionately upon corruptible things, nor gathereth together riches through a desire of pleasure. He delighteth not in pleasure, nor gathereth together, he delighteth not in pleasure. He grieveth not his neighbor. He sateth not himself with luxuries. He erreth not in the uplifting of the eyes, for the Lord is his portion. We have to have Alahayim before our eyes, knowing that Alahayim is our portion, and not looking upon anything else for gain. The good inclination receiveth not glory, nor dishonor from men, and it knoweth not any guile, or lie, or fighting, or reveling. For the Lord dwelleth in him, and lighteth up his soul. Now, remember we spoke about that if you don't want it, it's hard to receive it. But if we actually allow our Yache to enter in our vessel, because we just protect this vessel. That's our job. Our soul is in it, but our job is to allow Yache to come in and protect him from evil spirits coming into our vessel. So that's why we hear things like Emmanuel or Emmanuel Allah, which means Alahayim in us, because that's the purpose of it. Even in Revelations, when it said, I knocketh at the door, like it's our pleasure in the evil that actually shuts Alahayim out, because we actually don't want to let go of the evil. But it's our duty to let go of the evil so that Yache can come dwell in us. And it's our job to protect him dwelling in us. That's why it says, for the Lord dwelleth in him. Now, this is the good-minded man, right? Or woman. For the Lord dwelleth in him and lighteth up his soul. It's actually Yache that comes into us, that allows our eyes to be of light and our body to be of light. Because if we operate according to ourselves, even as Paul was referring to, we will have another law, which is the law of our members, that would call us to stay in the lust of the flesh and sin. For the Lord dwelleth in him and lighteth up his soul, and he rejoiceth toward all men always. The good mind hath not two tongues, a blessing and of cursing, of contumely and of honor, of sorrow and of joy, of quietness and of confusion, of hypocrisy and of truth, of poverty and of wealth. So the good mind is one way only. This is why we talk about the single-eyed man. The good mind only sees things one way. You can't see things two ways because that means that you're double-minded. The good-minded man only sees things one way. The good-minded man sees blessings. He speaks blessings. The good-minded man speaks of honor and joy and quietness and truth and wealth. There's only one way that you can see. And this is why many people struggle that feel that they're wise in this world, because they feel that the more they understand, the better it's going to be for them to walk. Because when knowing both good and evil, it makes it harder to walk. Because now you have two perspectives instead of just being single-eyed and only having one perspective. This is why hypocrisy is so rampant, because there's always two ways to see something. And people pick and choose based off of their pleasure or what gives them enjoyment of what side they're going to choose at every given point, instead of being single-eyed and only seeing things one way, which is Alahayim's way. But it have one disposition, uncorrupt and pure, concerning all men. So all of that being said, there's only one disposition, whether it's uncorrupt and pure. That's the only thing that matters. Which one is uncorrupt and pure? Whichever one is uncorrupt and pure, that's the right one. And that's the one that's going to lead you to Alahayim having a single eye. It hath not double sight. So we're seeing everything with the eye, the double sight, nor double hearing. That double sight of seeing things from both ways actually causes life to be harder. Think about Adam and Eve before the serpent. The only thing they knew was Alahayim's way, and everything was peaceful. As soon as they learned that there was another way, everything broke out into chaos. And this is why we have to be parents have to get it right Because if you start showing your child hypocrisy and you start showing your children that there's another way, it's going to be very hard for your children, and you start setting the stumbling block before them. Because they're supposed to be single-eyed. They're supposed to know only the way of Alahayim. But when you start showing them that there's another way through your hypocrisy, you actually become a stumbling block to the children. And you also are a stumbling block to yourself. Because you know both ways, and it makes it harder. This is why we have to be as little children. Little children don't know good and evil. They only know good. They only know what's pure and uncorrupt. And that's why it's so easy for children to do what's right. But it's actually the corruptness that they're seeing through their eyes, either from the world or from their own households, that causes them to be corrupt or corrupted. And this is our job as parents, to get it right so that we can actually protect our families. It hath not double sight, nor double hearing. For in everything which he doeth, or speaketh, or seeth, he knoweth that the Lord looketh on his soul. And we have to have that same fear, that everything that we do, everything that we speak, everything that we see, and everything that we know, that Alahayim is looking upon our soul. So our works, our words, our sight, and our knowledge. So if our knowledge contains both good and evil, and we're double-minded in all our works, Alahayim's looking upon our soul on that. If we're allowing evil to enter into our sight, if we're allowing evil to come forth from our lips, and our actions, we're working evil, Alahayim's looking upon our soul. We can't be double-minded. It's a stumbling block. That's why we have to start from today, not worried about the things of the past, but start from today and only focusing on those righteous and good things of a good man or a good woman that's going to allow us to bring forth the peaceable fruit of righteousness. And it's going to allow Yache to come and dwell in us, that the light may be formed in us, that our eyes may be full of light, and our body. There can't be another way. And he cleanseth his mind, that he may not be condemned by men as well as by Alahayim. We have to cleanse our mind from all the bad things and bad perspectives that we've learned. Because if we leave those bad perspectives in our mind, and those things are an option for us to get enjoyment from, it's going to be a struggle to bring forth light. In like manner, the works of Beliar are twofold, and there is no singleness in them. This is why many of us struggle. Because the works of Belial are twofold. There's two perspectives. And there's no singleness in them. But we have to be single-eyed and single-minded. That is only Alahayim's way and no other way. Because it's corrupt and it's impure. We're only supposed to cleave unto the things that are uncorrupt and pure. And if we set our mind upon those things, and that only, and only want to see those things that are uncorrupt and pure, we're going to actually allow Yache to come and dwell in us, that our whole body may be full of light. And if we get to that point, Alahayim willing, then we'll be able to let that light in us come forth unto all men. Luke chapter 11, verse 33. No man, when he hath lighted a candle, putteth it in a secret place, neither under a bushel, but on a candlestick, that they which come in may see the light. Luke 11 and 36. If thy whole body therefore be full of light, having no part dark, the whole shall be full of light, as when the bright shining of a candle doth give thee light. And that's the goal for us, that all may see that light that Alahayim has formed in us. We're going to finish off with the Gospel of Thomas, chapter 22, verse 1. Yache saw infants being suckled, and he said to his disciples, these infants being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom. They said to him, shall we then, as children, enter the kingdom? Yache said to them, when you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, and when you make the male and the female one and the same, so that the male not be male, nor the female, and when you fashion eyes in the place of an eye, and a hand in the place of a hand, and a foot in the place of a foot, and a likeness in the place of a likeness, then will you enter into the kingdom. Thank you for joining us here at Hebrew Readers Church. I'm your brother Zachwa. Please like and subscribe so that you can hit the notification bell so that you can receive all our new videos when we release them. Make sure you go and check out the website, www.hebrewreaders.com. We have plenty of information on there that's going to help you on your journey and in your walk. And we love you all. Alahayim keep you. Peace.
Hebrew readers, Hebrew readers, Hebrew readers, church.